That's correct.
I am probably one of the biggest cheerleaders.
That people, no matter what the color of their skin is, no matter what their religion is, end up having the same dreams and the same aspirations. And by the way, that's what I learned from that Sister City program. That was then under communism, and you saw the young people who work really well with young people from Burlington.
Let's stick with that race point.
This Ben Joravsky Show, Benny J bonus interview is brought to you in part by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local 9, the International Union of Operating Engineers Local 150, and the Chicago Federation of Labor. Benny J, take it away.
Bonus time on the Ben Joravsky Show as I speak. It's Friday, December 20th, the day after the great Democratic debate. Long-time listeners of the Ben Joravsky Show probably can predict who my guests are because we've made this sort of a ritual. After the debate, we do the cleanup of the debate. So my distinguished guests, I'll ask them to introduce themselves, starting with distinguished guest right here.
Hi, Sameena Mustafa. I am the host of a new podcast, Hand Her the Mic. Longtime patron of the arts, Ben Joravsky and Dennis, Dr. D. Glad to be back.
Distinguished guest number two.
Hi, I'm Litesa Wallace. I'm former state representative, former candidate for lieutenant governor. And today is our anniversary, Ben.
That is correct.
2 years ago today, I had my first interview with Ben Joravsky when he was with those other people.
Yeah, the other people. I can't remember the name of the station, D.
WCPT 820. They fired you.
Oh, yeah, they fired me. They fired me being too liberal, too lefty.
Too left for progressive talk. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's bad. Dang. So anyway,
The C is for centrist.
Yeah, the C is for centrist.
Centrist progress.
That's good.
That is. No wonder she's got her own podcast, D.
That's right.
Wait, time out. So were you there? I cannot remember. So help me out, Litesa. Were you there as a candidate for lieutenant governor or were you there as a state rep?
As a candidate for lieutenant governor. That's the first time we met.
Was that because I know I was going to book you? There was a person who told me to reach out to you. I don't want to give away secrets.
Yeah, I know who she is.
Okay.
She told you long before you ever did.
She said, call. I told you this already then. She said, you got to talk to this, blah, 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 blah. And, by the time I got around to doing it, you were already a big shot. So anyway, you came on my show.
Yeah.
That was 2 years ago?
2 years ago. Time flies.
Man,
Wow.
time flies. Wow. Well, you're still on my show. And
Thank you.
until I get fired again, you'll always be on my shows. All right. Letesa and Sameena have become regular correspondents post-debate. Very popular segment, I got to tell you guys. You should ask for a raise. I think I'll double your salaries.
What's
0 times 2.
Yeah.
Sameena, when and where can
I
people...
was I was a math lead. I'm just saying. I'm very good at math.
When and where can people check your show out?
So I'm on iTunes, and I'm also on a new platform called the Demcast Network. So you can find wherever you find your podcasts. And we just came out with our second episode on Wednesday. So
Super cool, man.
Dimcast Network?
yes.
Cool. Ben, let's try and get on there and see if you can get fired from that one.
That's correct. Oh man, the way I've been talking about Mayor Pete these days, I don't think I'll be anything with Dem in it. I'll be in trouble. That's a
Dems and Does.
Yeah, Dems and Does. All right, let's just start with some general thoughts about last night's debate. It took place, of course, in Los Angeles, California. There were I've lost track. I got to look. 7 members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sameena, I went to Evanston Township High School. I can count.
Impressive.
7 members. It's down to 7. Of course, Lord knows, come January, there could be 20 with the way things are going.
Entries of the billionaires.
Yeah, the billionaires. Isn't that funny how they leapfrog?
Oh, yeah.
How is Tom Steyer still on that stage? Anyway, general thoughts. We'll start with you, Sameena.
So we were talking a little bit before on air. I thought, one, I'm waiting for the time when there aren't any. This is just, it's a little bit of overkill. My overall impression was that there was a lot of beating up on Mayor Pete, which frankly, I was like, okay, I'm ready for it. Like he needed to be checked. I thought it's funny because the first headline I saw post-debate was Biden won the debate from the Washington Post, which I was like, wait. And there was a part of me for a second that was like, wait, Biden was there? I mean, because he didn't say a whole lot, but because he didn't make any major mistakes, they're sort of like, he won it. I'd say, and we're going to talk about this, I know, but Amy Klobuchar got in a lot of digs, but she also did something which is she complimented at least 3 of her fellow candidates in a really powerful way, which I thought was actually really good. So overall, I thought the moderation was not great. The sort of banter between segments was from the PBS analyst was terrible. The PBS Politico news hour, the PBS news hour and Politico folks. But the debate itself was it's just like these are getting to be a slog. They have to figure out some way to make them like a little bit more like people are being asked to like answer the question. Some candidates are and some are not. So I'll stop there.
A little inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think especially with them down to 7 people, there should have been opportunity for everyone to answer pretty much every question. I mean, it was a 3-hour-long debate. You would think that everyone's voice would have maybe been equally distributed across the time. I think that Yang came across very strong last night. He was able to call out things that probably others would have called out had they been there. And he specifically mentioned being the only candidate of color that was still on the stage. And I thought that that was very important for him to share, to say, and give his perspective. So I thought he was a really kind of a breakout person last night, because before we've had too many candidates on the stage and he really couldn't get a good stride, get his voice out there, and really share what he needed to share. That being said, it was true. Biden did have a relatively good night. He didn't ignore or forget any of the candidates on stage by saying,
"Oh, Kamala, last time that was going on."
The incident with Kamala last time. Of course, he and Bernie got into it. I thought that was a pretty funny moment. Reminded me of my grandfather and his younger brother at like family outings. They'd get into it over all these interesting, crazy things. And that allowed Amy Klobuchar to kind of step up and seem like the, quote, adult in the room for a moment, like, you know, simmer down, boys, to speak. So I think that this debate did give people more of an opportunity to express who they were and what their ideas are outside of those 3 front runners. But they still could have spent a little bit more time making sure everyone had an opportunity to answer the questions that everyone's waiting to hear answers from.
All right, you guys gave me a lot to go with. Follow-ups, Amy Klobuchar and Andrew Yang. But let's deal with the Andrew Yang issue about being the only person of color on the stage. And I didn't tell you guys, I didn't prep you with this. I'm throwing this at you without any prep. One of our guests, I think it was Sergio, right? I don't know. One of our guests we've been talking about this a lot on the show, why there are no people of color other than Andrew Yang, no black people, it's generally how I look at the world, still on the stage. And you guys teased me because I was drinking that Kamala Kool-Aid.
Did you send your donation?
Yeah, no, I did. So the Sergio Theory, I think it's Sergio. Sergio, I want to give credit to the person who came up with the theory. Follow me on this one. Is that for a black person to make it to the next, to these rounds, he or she has to be getting strong black support, because white people will be reluctant to support a black person. And black voters, follow me on this one, are reluctant to go support a black person because the results of Obama were so disappointing. And so that Barack Obama, while being a figure of great inspiration and pride and achievement, and symbolically very important, the payback for Black America was so woeful and so disappointing that black voters as a group are saying, all right, we're not going with the black person again. We're going to go back to old white guy. This is not my theory. I think it was Sergio's, because when I tried it out to Monroe the other day, remember D? He goes, oh, that sounds something stupid that Sergio would say. So I'd love to get your reaction to this, the issue of why there are no black candidates on stage at this stage of the election. Do you think there's some merit to what Sergio has to say, Sameena?
Well, as you know, I'm not black, but I can. This is what I will say: there is no monolithic black vote, right? There is a subset of voters who are black who feel like Obama didn't do what he set out to do, but other people who will say, well, he was the first black president, there was so much that was coming at him, and he did what he could. So there's a lot of different camps that are going to evaluate this. I think there's a couple of different ways to phrase this, and I'm going to lean on my good doctor over here. But there's a sort of the psychological effect that I think voters, and not just black voters, are doing, which is like, and I think Mehdi Hassan put it this way. He's like, everyone's sort of playing pundit. They're all trying to figure out who is going to beat Trump, or who's electable, or who will Joe Sixpack in Ohio vote for, who's presumably a white guy, middle-class white guy or working-class white guy in Ohio. Who's he going to vote for? And guess what? He's going to vote for Trump. So, I think there's a lot of people who are not realizing that it actually has more to do with name recognition. Joe Biden is just well known. It's not necessarily that he's the best candidate, and a lot can change after Iowa, which is when I think that's like sitting here now. Obama didn't have a lot of black support, but I think once he won Iowa, people started to take a second look at him.
Litesa.
So I'll pick up where you just left off. I remember in 2007 being a young mom, putting my 3-year-old on a bus to go up to Iowa and knock doors for who my son referred to as Old Rock Obama. And we went with a stroller to knock on doors for Old Rock Obama. We were 2 of the 3 black people on the bus to go knock doors for him. So yeah, the enthusiasm at the level of the average African American family did not really kick off until there was this proof that there is possibly a path of success for this individual. I think in this current race, I don't know if people saw that path present. When we have who we have as the president right now, you say, yes, a black woman could go against him, when we've seen that he's been able to get away with racist, xenophobic, and sexist behavior, commentary, have an administration that actually is pushing agendas that are all of those things. It's hard for people to look at a black woman and say, yes, she could be the one to take out this individual who got elected despite him being against everything that she presents to the world. Same thing if you're talking about a Cory Booker. I don't know how we get to a point where we have a racist president, and we have to deal with middle America and rural America, or just, if we want to stereotype, because I'm stereotyping right now, trying to figure out who that person would vote for, that average white Joe would vote for. It's not at this point a person of color. But that being said, there's a real economic reason as well. And Andrew Yang said this last night. In order to donate to campaigns, you have to have discretionary funds. Mm-hmm. And we're living in an America in which people are just barely getting by. We say that there's less unemployment, but of course that's people working 2 and 3 part-time jobs to piece it all together to make it all work out. Who has $40, $50, $100 to send to a candidate once, let alone every month? And I think I think it's a very economic reason. I don't think it's necessarily that we were so let down by President Obama, so to speak, but the economic reality hasn't changed no matter who's been in the White House for many black families.
You hear that, Sergio? You've been trying, slapped around twice. I actually kind of think Sergio's onto something.
Yeah, well, and I want to dovetail on what Litesa just said about what Andrew Yang brought up, which is really important. Only 5% of folks actually give to political candidates. And there was something recently, I think Daily Beast published something, I saw the headline, which is for women candidates running for the House, black women raised half as much as their white female counterparts. Mm-hmm. So we don't have as many data points at the presidential level because we just haven't had as many, black and brown women running for president, but we have a few more data points there. So you're seeing, kind of that trend line. And so you don't have, I remember when I was running, I remember talking to somebody about potentially thinking about running, and he said, something you should know about our community is we don't give and we don't vote. And so Like, I mean, that's the reality for a lot of communities, and it's not because it's not even always that it's a capacity issue. Is this something we're engaged in? Is this do candidates reach out to us? Like the amount of outreach that a candidate or a citizen or a voter in Iowa and New Hampshire is getting, there are some communities that never get that attention,
Ever.
right?
Ever.
Let's talk
So
about
that's a broader issue.
Let's talk about that. I just saw before the show your tweet about how if the Democrats wanted black voters to have a greater say on who the nominee was, they would not put two white states at the front of the race.
And that's from Julian Castro. Julian Castro was saying that. I just retweeted what he said.
All right, they give him the credit.
Yeah.
Speaking of people who weren't on the stage on Thursday. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, his absence was really felt on.
No, the fact that the Democrats, think about this, they could, can't you rearrange the schedule? You could make the South first.
Control a lot of the
And that was actually his point. Yeah, that was his point, is that it's only been this way since the early 70s. It's not like it's been time immemorial. Like this is where I think there's I think it's a combination of imagination, and fear. And it's like that conversation you and I had about, that Democrats are always afraid to lead and afraid to take the power that they have. I mean, that's a totally a longer conversation, but they could say like, hey, this is not where our base is, and this will not, serve the needs of our electorate, and really be forceful about this. But it's like, Democrats want to have it both ways. They want to look like the party of diversity, but they don't want to advocate. Yeah, they don't want to alienate
Joe.
Yeah, Joe Sixpack. Let's just say it.
All right. So, Litesa, do you think that in today's day and age, if the party is too closely identified with black voters, it will automatically alienate Joe Sixpack, whoever he is?
Whoever he is. If we're being very honest with ourselves, anti-blackness is real, is deep, it's to the core. Even something as simple as movies, right? If the poster has too many characters who are black, are other people really going to see the film? Yeah, they will go, but not in the same numbers as if it were a majority white cast on that poster. It becomes automatically, that's a black film. Well, it's the same no matter what. Even the seat that I formerly held, there was never a black person in that seat until 2001. And now it's the black seat in that area. Even though the demographics of the district don't point to a majority of black residents or a majority of black voters. So it's like once something is deemed too black, people do step back from it. That is just an unfortunate reality. I do think, however, if they were to switch how primaries were happening, then that would mean there'd have to be some real fundamental changes to the access to the right to vote in those states, because those southern states that we just kind of mentioned could be an example for where primaries could start because of the number of black residents and potentially black voters. I say potentially because in 2013, the Voting Rights Act was gutted. So some of those states aren't even having to worry about making sure they're providing real access to the ballot box. And some really moved quickly to put barriers up to remove voters from the rolls. But that's also an area, those states are also areas where individuals who get felonies do not have their voting rights returned to them. So there, of course, the pushes in Georgia and Florida, and pushes all over the country to re-enfranchise individuals. But I think in Illinois, we forget that there are a lot of places that you don't ever vote again. So would it even still give voice to black voters if we were to move in that direction? I think because of the structural and intentional racism, it still wouldn't work.
Well, when thinking back what you're saying about going on the bus with your son back in 2007, I have such strong, vivid memories of Obama winning Iowa and the impact that had on black voters in this country. By chance, I was on a bus the day after Obama won Iowa, and they were playing some morning show, a black morning show, and the hosts were having a field day with it. All these white people voted for Barack Obama. We got to vote, and they were making a joke out of it, but it was very real, and I could just see things changing. And this is what I'm going to put to you, because you ran on a left of center essentially ticket with young Daniel Biss for governor back in 2018. To me, the reason Barack Obama won Iowa in 2008, by the way, guys, feel free to vigorously disagree with me with what I'm about to say. The reason he won was because he was left of center on the war. He won because all those lefties in Iowa saw he wasn't a senator, so he didn't get to vote on the Iraqi war, but he appeared at one rally, one anti-war. He was riding that horse all the way. It's not that I'm against all wars. I'm just against this war, man. But he played it. And a lot of lefties, and I know lefties, Litesa, really well, because that's where I come from. They're like, oh, yeah, he's the anti-war candidate. And Hillary Clinton voted for the war, and she's the pro-war candidate. And that, in my humble opinion, gave him Iowa. And none of these Dems, they hate almost as much as they're afraid of black people, they're afraid of lefties. And they think lefties are the kiss of death. And the bizarre...
So imagine being a black lefty.
God. That's a whole other subject.
What, does Tiffany Haddish call herself a black unicorn?
Yes, love Tiffany Haddish. Just had her black mitzvah.
Yes,
but
she did.
Anyway, so what's your thoughts on that, Sameena? The fact that it was the left that put Barack Obama in Iowa, and then it was all gravy for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely made him. There were so many things that were happening around that time that contributed to his success and his message breaking through. And what we, let's come back to what is going to happen in like less than 2 months. People on the ground, knocking doors, talking to people. His operation was something that was groundbreaking in terms of how much it motivated young folks, people of color. Like it was, they call it an Obama coalition that everyone's trying to capture again because it was broad based and it brought out a lot of young voters. So my concern with the crop of folks who were on the stage last night was that some of them. They're all sort of, there's so many people running that someone like a Cory Booker or even a Kamala Harris could have had maybe a little bit more support and maybe Kamala Harris could have stayed a little bit longer if there weren't, 10 other people, 15 other people competing for the dollars and the sound bites and the press. So Obama didn't have to compete with that many people.
There were a lot of people running. When Obama ran, you were there.
Was it 25 people? Was it 25?
No, it wasn't
24.
25.
But that's what I'm saying. Was it 25 people and several billionaires?
Yeah.
I said corrected. No.
I mean, like even was it Delaney? He's got at least $200 million.
Yeah.
Like that
Is he
guy's-
still in the race?
I don't know.
remember.
You know
We're
what?
still in the race anymore.
Maybe Dennis could
I'm
check.
really bad at that.
Dennis is checking his stock portfolio
I-
right there.
but like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's so many people, and so like
So there were advantages that Obama had to that race that was working against Kamala. By the way, I just want to point out that I was the one drinking the Kamala Kool-Aid. I think both of you made
didn't
fun of me.
Write a check.
Yeah, well, that's
I'm sorry.
I knew it would be my fault sooner or
It's
later.
your fault.
All right,
I'm
so
sorry.
talk about black lefties. Let's get into that one. This is a really this has been on my mind
I
lately.
almost feel like it's a, what do they call that? I don't know. What do you when you say like a male nurse or like a, I don't know.
Yeah,
What's the phrase?
A contradiction in terms.
like an
No,
oxymoron.
not even an oxymoron. I feel like it's like it's the same thing.
Yeah. Oh,
It's the
repetitious.
same. Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm sorry. It's been a rough day, you
That's
guys.
all right.
It's redundancy.
Redundant.
Right?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
very redundant, extremely redundant, in my estimation. Especially if you're talking about like economic issues, you're talking about, economic justice, environmental justice. When you start to speak about living wages and access to health care, all of those things, I think saying like a black leftist is pretty redundant because people in our communities have been fighting for these things for a very long time. It just took someone with white male privilege to be able to kind of center the energy around that and be able to speak about it and it be heard and not, fall on deaf ears. But that's my personal opinion.
That's a good
I think
point.
I
Because-
never even identified as, quote, progressive until 2017. I never labeled myself as that. I just knew that these are the things that needed to be fought for because it's just basic basic things that make life comfortable, bearable in the richest country on the planet. Like, why do we have so many homeless people? Why do we have people who work every single day but still have to apply for public benefits such as Medicaid and SNAP, and who can't even meet their energy bills, so they have to apply for LIHEAP? They couldn't go to work if they didn't have child care assistance, yet they go to work 40, 50 hours a week and still can't get by. That's a problem. It's an issue we've seen in our community, in the African American community, for a very long time, and we've fought against that for a very long time. So I think saying black leftists is pretty redundant. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think what's interesting is thinking about political discourse is so it can be so academic at times in a way that's like, oh, you didn't say it quite the way it's supposed to be said, or you're like, there's a little bit of like a know-it-all attitude, and not to say like people aren't well read and they don't know this stuff, but it's like, make it relate to what's going on with me. Like, I mean, I when I would talk to folks, it didn't matter their sort of education level. Everybody kind of wants to know what's in it for me. Don't lecture me. Don't talk to me about like stuff that's like, just to make yourself look smart. That's kind of Pete Buttigieg's whole brand, right? That's his whole brand. But one other thing that when Litesa was speaking, I was remembering an essay that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote, and it was in the Atlantic, and I think I might have been at the very end of Obama's presidency or right after. It was called "My President Was Black," and there was one point that I remember really struck me, was that he was saying how Obama's mother and grandparents were white, and that he. And this was again Ta-Nehisi Coates sort of like saying like, why was he able to go to Iowa? Why was he able to engage white folks?
Well, having the ability to have that social capital of being in a family where you learn things that I'm probably not going to learn.
Right.
I don't have access to that language, that currency, that the type of interactions that, and I don't mean like monetary currency, but
or even like the academic
or
even the ideas. It's just like
what
the comfort
it takes to be able to speak in certain circles. That.
Well, I'm listening to you. Although by now, Litesa, you've been in those rooms enough, so you have the confidence. You were the lieutenant gubernatorial candidate. You were a state rep. You stood up. You had to deal with Republicans. We used to talk, when you come on the show, we talk about some of those insane debates the Republicans would throw at you. It's crackers and applesauce.
Sorry.
We're overfeeding the kids.
Yeah.
But your point's well taken. Now we're on a tangent with the tangent. This is why I'm always promoting integration. You got to be able to deal with those different rooms. And it's a problem more for black people because those are white rooms, so to speak, in quotes.
And we're
so
shut out of
you're
them.
shut out of them. And just in my life experience, black people are a hell of a lot more tolerant than white people about letting you in. Who's calling me? So Barack Obama had an advantage because he was already in the room, so to speak.
And also, I mean, I think most folks can relate to this. There's an amount of code switching that goes on. You do. It's not that Litesa isn't saying that she couldn't do it. It's just that you didn't have white grandparents. You didn't have a white mom. Right. Like it makes it. There's something different, right? So like even in that story that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote, he's like, when Obama walked into those Iowa family rooms or living rooms and he saw like the plastic on the couch, it's like his grandma's house. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there was a difference. But that being said, and you've asked us this question, will there be a gay president before a woman president, or like there's some of these barriers that showed up on stage, and some of them are still realities for candidates at whether it's at the presidential level or down ballot.
All right, let's get to women barriers, but I just want to say one thing to the point you were making, Litesa, before we move on. black lefties. That's great. It's redundant. I'm going to steal that line. And because it's pretty much lost to history, only old timers like me remember this. Jesse Louis Jackson in 1988 ran for president, came in second. His platform was Bernie before Bernie.
Absolutely.
Right.
My hero, Harold Washington, was Bernie before Bernie.
Absolutely.
The great champions of politics from Black Chicago were lefties.
Or
And-
think of a Shirley Chisholm who had the nerve, right? Talk about audacity, right? Talk about audacity and nerve. And I'm going to walk my itty bitty self into this room and say, I want to be the next
But
president.
what did Obama do, though? What did Obama do? He went the other way. He went to the center. So when Jesse Louis Jackson ran in 1988, and I mean, he didn't have any of the advantages that Barack Obama had, and he was not embraced by the center of the. He ran from the left, Jesse Louis Jackson. Barack Obama made a conscious decision to go to the center. He always made it clear that he was different than people on the left. He would
And he's
kind
continuing to do that.
Yes, he is.
And who
Throwing
is he
Bernie under a
continuing
bus.
to do that?
And who is he fundamentally attacking when he says those things about the woke people or the cancel culture?
Yeah.
Who is he fundamentally attacking? He's attacking black folks and really black
Very
women.
young, vocal
Yeah.
black people.
Black female and gender nonconforming folks, activists who are saying, are starting things like Black Lives Matter, Asada's Daughters, BYP 100. Like, that's who he's attacking. Let's be clear. And so these are folks who probably maybe were old enough to vote in 2008, and maybe 2016 was their first election, but they know what's up. They know what's up with Obama. So like maybe in Sergio world, that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
that theory would make sense.
Sergio,
apply
of course.
to that.
Maybe, you know what? I just want to say this, and Sergio is probably
I hope
listening.
it was him.
I don't know if it was
I'm
Sergio who said
misattributing.
it. I just want to say, Monroe said it sounded something like Sergio would say, so Sergio's going to get credit. But it was someone, and I thought it was a very insightful comment, and so I always like to give credit to the person who comes up with it. Unless I tell you to your face, I'm just going to steal your line. But I think it was Sergio. Anyway, all right, barriers to women. And I read something that was pretty interesting about the debate. So follow me on this one, if I could do this. That concluding question, which was kind of a frivolous question by Judy Woodruff, which was, what was it? Who do you forgive, and what gifts would you give? And some very, I gotta give it some perceptive writer, I don't remember who it was, pointed out that there were 7 candidates on stage, 5 men, 2 women. The 5 men all talked about their books and pushing their books, essentially taking the opportunity to sell some books, and they didn't forgive for anything. The 2 women forgave.
Yeah, they asked for forgiveness.
My bad. They asked for forgiveness.
Self-deprecating.
Klobuchar and Warren, Warren said, she had just been in this fight with Buttigieg, so she was sort of like apologizing for going strong, and totally just legitimate in my humble opinion. And then Amy Klobuchar, who, I'm starting to drink that Amy Kool-Aid, but let's see some.
But did you write a check?
No, I did not write a check.
Okay.
But, and she apologized for being blunt. So what's your thoughts on that one?
We're always apologizing. Oh my gosh, we're always apologizing. And I think it's what people expect. It falls within the line of traditional gender roles. You're not supposed to be too blunt. You can't be too aggressive. Well, if you're too assertive, you're too aggressive. You can't, you shouldn't offend the men. You shouldn't, do anything that's not, quote, ladylike. Those things continue to permeate, even if it's not as overt as it used to be. And I believe that was why it was so interesting that, the women were the ones who decided to say, please forgive me for not being ladylike. I mean, they may as well have kind of said that. But I think if they hadn't, the headlines would be very different today about how they stood up for themselves and how they were assertive. That might have actually mitigated some negative headlines. So you're always walking that line as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not, I was struck by the fact that it was a question asked by kind of a older white woman by Jody Woodruff herself. Like, so she kind of set up a question that, probably is something she herself has faced, as a woman in journalism. But I was really disappointed with Warren's response. Like, I just thought and then when Klobuchar did the exact same thing, I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? I mean, I know it, I understand it. And really, if you could summarize that response, it was the women said, forgive me, and the men said, I'm the gift. That's basically what it was. Like, I'm the gift.
Yeah, buy my book, my 3 or 4 books.
I am my mere existence is a gift to you. You're welcome. That's what it was. And it's the
I want to go
narcissism.
off into a spiritual deep dive on that, but I won't.
The narcissism.
Deep dive.
The narcissism that it took to say that, but
It started with young Andrew, I might add. He was the first one. He had the question first. And he goes, I got a book.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, actually, how he even set it up. He was flattered that Elizabeth had started his book. So it was, even he sort of caged it. His wasn't as bold as some of the others. His was still, he had softened it a little bit, but it still was,
Well, what he did was, now we're analyzing this, the reaction to this question. What he did was, he was the first guy who had the question. So
yeah, I know, he laughed. He was
laughed.
uncomfortable.
He was like, dang, this question is weird. I don't know.
I know.
I did not prep for this.
Right.
And Judy Woodruff was like, I got a question in that you didn't prep for. And so he was like, habita. I don't know how I'm going to answer it. And so then as a joke, he said, read my book. And then the others, was like,
that
oh,
as a
yeah,
cue.
I'll go with that. Took it as a cue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that says more about who they really are. The questions like this are either, just fill the time or just waste time, or they kind of reveal more about their personality. And when I think about the overall debate, it is too bad that Klobuchar and Warren decided to do the apologies, because I felt like their willingness to kind of get into it and really lock horns specifically with Mayor Pete was actually the best part of the debate. That actually was like, okay, let's get into it. Like, what do we stand for as a party? What do we believe in? What are we going to fight for?
Yeah.
Right.
That in all of these debates, and the last two especially, Litesa, the format they have, where they allow for candidates to just break off and spar, have always produced, in my humble opinion, the best moments. In the last debate, it was Tulsi.
Yeah, I know.
We'll get into Tulsi. Romano pretty much did
that white suit was getting a workout. That white suit.
Tulsi went at it with Pete Buttigieg, if you remember the last debate. And then last night, so you got these, and then they go, well, you mentioned my name, so I get to talk.
I know.
I'm like, oh, they're going at it. Like, yeah, man, let them talk. I really thought Amy Klobuchar, get your thoughts on this, Litesa. I thought she did herself justice in her exchange with Mayor Pete. And she leapfrogged to third on my ranking of candidates that I like, which I will reveal. I know you guys are going to keep yours close to, you're not going to say who you're for, but she's now number 3.
Did.
You did on the show the last time, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. But I do think that her ability to really describe what the experience of public service means and the things that you can move when you are really trying to be a servant to the people, and having the experience of doing that at multiple levels, I thought that was so important. I'm so glad that she was able to draw that contrast, because it goes back to what we were saying last time about how if a woman had the same resume as Pete Buttigieg, it would not be, she wouldn't be on the national stage right now. She just wouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
And so for her to be able to talk about the fact that in every level that she's served in, she's been able to accomplish things for the people that she represents and draw that really strong contrast was extremely important. So yeah, she shouldn't have apologized for distinguishing herself and really highlighting her experience.
I mean, what are they there for? They're there to make the case,
Right.
that they're the right person, that they're the one who can make those tough decisions and not back down. Mm-hmm. Like, this is your audition.
Well, I got to tell you guys, I'm going to throw something out to you. I'd love to get your reaction. Listening to you talk and talking about how...
With my reindeer.
Wait, we just put the reindeer thing on. I love the reindeer thing. Letitia's feeling very the Christmas spirit. She got this reindeer thing. All right, when you were talking about how the women on the stage felt compelled to ask for forgiveness, and the men felt empowered to proclaim themselves as gifts. That's very well done. I was thinking there is a model of a woman who doesn't back down, a woman who's just unapologetically assertive and doesn't care, let the chips fall where they may, and the crowds cheer her on. She's just not on the lefty side of the plate. She's just not on the Democratic side of the plate. Her name is Sarah Palin.
What?
And Sarah Palin, it's once again, Republicans are unafraid to throw away convention. They're in a way that Democrats are so tied down to convention. Democrats are so afraid to let their inner freak flag fly. Sarah Palin was unafraid to, like, her dysfunctional family, bring them all out, and I'm proud of it, and you hit me, I hit you back. I didn't like Sarah Palin.
She wasn't proud of it, though.
She wasn't proud of her dysfunctional family?
It had to come out first, and then it was, I have to defend myself since this information has come out to the broader public. But remember, Palin was... Come on now, Ben.
I'm not saying I like her.
Oh, my God.
I would never vote for her. I'm just saying Sarah Palin.
But think about what also was happening. We thought that Hillary Clinton might emerge.
Emerges what?
I mean, this was after the primary, so I misspoke. But the thought is that the women didn't get their Democratic nominee. So maybe we can, because the women aren't that smart anyway, we'll put a woman on our ticket and maybe she'll draw some of those votes over to us. Like, it wasn't that Sarah Palin was so unapologetic and was so
I'll put it to you this
whatever.
way. When we talked about this a lot last week on the show, Hillary Clinton's appearance on the Howard Stern show. That was a big topic of conversation on our show. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But one of the things, God, I went on and on about it. I was obsessed with that one. But one of the things that they talked about was when Hillary Clinton was in the debate with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump moved into her space.
Right, I remember that.
And did you remember when it happened? I don't know if you heard her
seeing it.
talk about with Howard Stern.
No, I did. I didn't hear
I didn't
her.
see that interview,
Okay,
but
all right. And
heard that interview.
I'm doing
but
my
I-
best to paraphrase her response. Howard said, why did you not respond to that? And she said that she felt that if she responded in a manner that showed she was offended by that, and turn around and to assert her right to her space, that she would have been written off as an aggressive woman, and it would come back to hurt her. Now, I think Sarah Palin would have turned around and said, "Get out of my space." I think Sarah Palin would have said, "Get her out," and because Republicans aren't tied to the same conventions that Democrats. Democrats pretend as though it's legit and we're all playing by the rules and we're all responsible and respectable. And Donald Trump tweets out whatever he wants to tweet, insults whoever he wants to insult. Sameena's shaking her head. Go.
So here's the thing. So let's be clear. Sarah Palin essentially, set the stage for Donald Trump, right?
Yes, she did.
But the interesting thing about Donald Trump is, remember, even establishment Republicans didn't really know what to make of him. And he wasn't their pick, right? It was Jeb Bush. And, they didn't like Paul Ryan. I mean, you saw the sort of response of the Republican establishment to Donald Trump. But when they realized they could get what they wanted with Donald Trump, then they'll defend him till their deaths. So it's when they realized they could control some things about him, and certain points, like in terms of agendas that serve their base and really, frankly, their donors, then they were like, okay, we're gonna back this guy. Sarah Palin, frankly, didn't have the same. She frankly wasn't as captivating. She definitely got folks animated, and she, had a moment, but she just couldn't sustain it. I mean, when she really was, to Letisa's point, when you really started to scrutinize her, and she didn't hold up that well, and her narrative wasn't as strong. And so Donald Trump has really navigated this path and in a way been that, sort of unicorn on the right. He does things that nobody else can get away with. And so I think Democrats thinking like, oh, we need our own sort of 70-something cranky, gaffe-prone, handsy. Yeah. It's not necessarily going to work, okay? And so it's funny because I know that at some point during the debate, towards the end, I think it was actually, I'm trying to remember which question it was a response to, but it was when Biden actually started saying that someone came up to him and I actually didn't know about Biden's history of stuttering. Oh, yeah. And he started to stutter, and then Sarah Huckabee Sanders tweeted, essentially was obviously poking fun at Biden's stutter. And she had to apologize and took it down. She didn't, because she claims she didn't know about the stutter, which is it's
just did this very in-depth interview about
doing it.
But again, yeah. Let's just take her at her word. But the fact that she actually apologized and deleted it, which doesn't happen very often, some people made that to seem like, oh, Biden's the only one where they would do that. I'm like, no, I don't know if that's true.
Wait, they don't know.
Sort of like the pundit class was saying, like, oh, if Biden can get Sarah Huckabee Sanders, like one of these like crazy, talking heads on the right, to like back off and apologize, like that bodes well for how he'll do in the general. And I'm just like, I wouldn't necessarily make everything, like, don't interpret this one incident as meaning everything, because it's like Biden didn't like throw up or something or do something like crazy on stage, but he wasn't exceptional either. And one thing we never got to is the fact that when he was asked specifically about reparations, now this is a candidate who is is talking all this, like, oh, I've got the most black support, didn't answer the question. Sure didn't answer the question at all. And none of the moderators called him on it, even though they called almost every single, they called Bernie out, they called the other, they called Elizabeth out, they even called Mayor Pete out. Yeah. Didn't call Biden out for not answering the question.
Litesa, you were shaking your head passionately when I was raising the Sarah Palin example. I just wanted you to get your opportunity to get those thoughts out.
I don't even know what to say about her.
Let me ask you this.
It was an interesting time, is all I can say.
Was there a lieutenant? I just can't remember. Was there a lieutenant governor's debate?
There was one at UIC, and there was an inadvertent face-off between Stratton and I, because no one else made it.
Okay. Wow. I wish I had been at that one. All right. So
we got the endorsement for the Galesburg area.
Okay.
After that debate.
Geez, Wallace throws down a little. Take that,
I
Juliana.
also had a moment to be on the. I had a moment with Governor Pritzker as well.
All right. So, what would you have done? I mean, I know it's Monday morning quarterback is easy, but let's say you were Hillary Clinton and Donald John Trump just boldly, blatantly violated all the protocols of debate and courtesy and stepped into your space and just hovered around you, moving around as a distraction?
I'm not sure what I would do in the debate moment on the campaign trail. I'll share a story from the floor, though. I just called it out into the mic. I mean, there was someone who decided that they were going to kind of talk to me as I was speaking to a bill. I'm presenting one of my own bills, and I just said, people should not talk to members while they're trying to present legislation. And it's funny because when you speak into the mic on the floor, the recording only hears your voice. They don't know that there's someone speaking to you. They don't know you're replying to that person. But I felt that I was being very disrespected by this particular white male member who thought it was funny to, interrupt me as I was presenting a bill.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it would have hurt Hillary Clinton had she turned around and said, Donald, please go to your side of the stage?
It probably would have. I mean, toward the end of my time in Springfield, I was known as difficult.
Difficult?
Because, of course, black women are angry and difficult.
You know what? I think
and women are difficult if you ask too many questions or assert yourself too much.
Mm-hmm.
Depending, I can't remember which debate it was, but I do remember seeing that happen. And I do remember, hearing things like, she's just a nasty, nasty woman. And then that became like its own meme and T-shirts and whatever. And I think it would have probably been something that would have animated people who were supporting Clinton or likely to support her if she had said something. But again, I think there's always this, I'm afraid to, going back to the debate, I'm afraid to appear too strong or too bold or too whatever. And it's unfortunately something that is like across the board on the party, is like we're afraid to upset this mythical creature that is going to never vote for us anyway.
Right. But let's talk about that fear,
Yeah.
though, because it's not just fear as a party, since we're talking about gender. Even when you muster up the strength to break through all these barriers, there is still a fear that exists with being a woman. There is, you still feel intimidated at times. So I know that she might have said that she was fearful of coming across as aggressive. I think people who've survived various forms of violence, I don't know what her history is. Again, I've kind of been open about my own life and my history. I think someone coming in my space like that, internally, I would have shut down. Like, wait a minute, you're too close. You're doing something you shouldn't be doing. And I think women often still have to operate from this point of, I'm physically not able probably to take this person on, because no matter what, we still have that instinctual fight or flight thing happens. It doesn't go away, and it's protected us for millions of years as human beings, right? But I think that women still operate from a place of fear, whether it's, fear of being perceived a certain way or actual fear in those particular situations where someone is in your personal space.
By the way, Howard Stern, I got to give him credit for this, what a memory he had. He pointed out that it had happened to Hillary Clinton previously when she was running for Senate in New York in 2000. There was a debate against the Republican whose name has escaped me. He wanted her to sign some, one of those campaign hoax things, like a pledge. I don't know what it was. It was like a no tax pledge or something. So are you going to sign this pledge? And he walked over from his podium to her podium and put the pledge to her. And there's a picture of him standing at her podium, and she just ignored him. But it's like,
because our space is, we can be violated.
Yeah.
Literally or figuratively. There are some people who just feel because, and this again is not necessarily conscious. This is maybe some subconscious stuff going on, right? But I am a man. I can assert myself. I'm going to be a man in this situation. And I've never had to question, do I come across as too forceful or too aggressive? So I'm going to go in her space and put this pledge in her face, or I'm going to walk into her circle of personal space and feel like I have the right to be there. That's male privilege.
Well, speaking of male privilege and assertive males, I'm throwing this question out to another regular guest on the show who'll be on in a couple weeks, Heidi Henry, Heartland Mamas. She has her own podcast, The Heartland Mamas. And whenever I have Bernie Bros on the show, and I have a lot of Bernie Bros coming through the studio, she sends me texts going, I can't take another Bernie bro. Heidi, I love you. I can't take another Bernie bro. And she talks about Bernie bros, how insulting they are to women, how much contempt they showed for Hillary Clinton that was just beyond the contempt they had, like, say, for Trump, and how they don't recognize their own misogyny. Heidi, I hope I'm doing a good job of paraphrasing what you're saying. You're coming on in a couple of weeks. You could say it yourself. But is that your response as well, Sameena, to Bernie Bros?
Well, let me put it this way. I think the misogyny is not unique to one candidate's supporters. It's everywhere. When Kamala Harris announced that she was dropping out, I shared something on my page about the fact that her candidacy was still significant. And it was like several men and one man of color, it was mostly white men, one man of color said, well, and they still need to be like, but she said she was a cop, but she said this, and she's terrible. And one guy actually said something like, well, she slept her way into politics. So even when, even when she's already said, I'm out, they felt the need to hit at her. That's just
as a person, and not
as a person, as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, I don't actually know which candidates they support. I just know that they felt perfectly comfortable attacking her as a woman, even though she was like, I'm done, I'm out. And so that is something that I've done some analysis of my own run, and my sense is that my own experiences is that it was typically white men, but not all white men, who would attack me for my identity. So if I was Muslim, woman, a person of color, and so like there was always something about my, like they felt like it was fair game, and so I don't know what to say, but we're like, this is not unique to Bernie supporters. There's plenty of, I'm sure, Mayor Pete supporters who are, coming at women. Like there is this assumption that somehow men are still at the center. Congress is, not even 24% women.
Right.
I mean, this is across the board. And even at the state level, local level, it's only 25%. This is not unique to like one person supporters. But the question is, are you sort of like going back to the Kamala as a cop, Lori as a cop, are you more willing to judge women and attack women for not being pure or not being, having some ideology? And like we've said before, if those black women had the same politics as some of the progressives, they would never be elected because no one would support them.
Well, all right, before I turn to Litesa for her thoughts on this, I just want to tell people the election that Sameena was alluding to, she ran for Congress in 2018 in the Democratic primary against Mike Quigley in the 5th Congressional District. Okay, your thoughts.
Everything that she just said. Everything you just said. And
I'm like, no, here I am apologizing. I'm sorry, Litesa, I should have let you speak. I'm sorry.
But I also have seen that when I've seen candidates of color be attacked more as well for not being pure. So there's this, when we talk about Bernie bros, let's be clear about who we're talking about. Again, it's not just male privilege, it's typically white male privilege. Right. And the ability to assert what you think about something and just put it out there and people should just take it. I recall last year speaking at an event it was an event in honor of Bernie Sanders' birthday. It was kind of a fundraiser for a local organization. I can't remember which group. So sorry, you guys, if you're listening. I was the only woman of color in the room. And I was the only person who, when she spoke, was interrupted. Like, almost corrected, because I used the term white privilege, and I talked about being able to go into neighborhoods that you may feel uncomfortable in, and why aren't we widening the net? Why aren't we bringing people in? Because as we said earlier, so many of the messages around progressivism and the things that Bernie ran on are things that truly appeal to communities of color, but somehow they're not coming to a Bernie Sanders dinner in honor of his birthday in, I think, King County. I can't remember. But as I was speaking, at least two people felt that they could interject as I spoke, but they did not do that. Daniel was there that night. This is after the campaigns. This is after the primary. Several other local candidates were there that night. They didn't interrupt anybody else but me. So there is something about being a woman, and certainly something about being black, and heaven forbid if you happen to possess both those identities, in which people believe that what you have to say is not that valuable. We don't really need to listen to you. And I'm not going to give you the same respect and deference that I gave to the other speakers who were in this same space, where I have something to say that I disagree with you. As you're speaking, you're saying something I disagree with. And so I'm going to say it right now, instead of waiting until there's an opportunity to speak or take questions or anything like that.
Well, following up on that, what was your reaction to the way Bernie at the debate last night handled the race question? And just to, if people that missed the debate, the question posed to him had to do with the fact that there was only one person of color on the stage. There were no black people on the stage. And that's my generational thing.
I'm okay with saying black. I mean, I'm fine with that.
No.
If you're talking about black people, say black people.
Yeah, no.
But if
that's
you're
not what I'm
talking
getting
generally.
But my focus, and people have called me out for this, is that I always view the world in black and white. That's how I was raised. It's a generational thing. It was like I was late to realize, like, this is confession time. There were other races, other people. I was just like, isn't everybody like an ethnic?
Right.
But you're like Italian to me. And it was, I'm sorry. That's how, it's like.
Tell that to airport security.
Yeah, well, things have changed since I was a kid at Nichols Junior High. But in the little world where I first encountered different people, like Indian kids were like Jewish kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I was telling Romana this, when I saw The Farewell, which I don't know if you guys have seen, it's an unbelievably great movie. It's about a Chinese-American family. I'm like, that's like every Jewish family I've ever seen. They're just Chinese.
Mm-hmm. My big fat Greek wedding is my family.
Yeah. So anyway, so there's no black people on the stage is what I'm getting at. And so they're asked Bernie that. And and then he kind of ducked and dodged. Well, I want to go back to the last.
To climate change.
He wanted to go back to climate change. Right. Yeah. So how do you think he handled his
I think he
there?
cleaned it up well at the end. I think maybe if he had been allowed to say what he was saying without being interrupted, to your point of how certain people were redirected to the question and one person never was redirected to answer the question. I think if it had flowed out without that interruption, it might not have seemed as bad. But when he started to talk about climate change and then the moderator interrupted and said, we're talking about race, but he was trying to come back to the point of environmental justice and where do we have so many areas of poor air quality and so many children with asthma, so many people suffering from various forms of cancer. Where are these toxic things being dumped? It's in lower income neighborhoods where people are not resourced and not able to organize. And unfortunately, because of how race and economics are tied, that means a good chunk of Black people live in areas in which climate change and just awful environmental issues are pressing on them every single day. Could it have come across a lot more eloquently? Definitely. And I think he probably should have just started with something like saying environmental justice or saying how climate change impacts these communities. Like what he said at the end, he should have said at the beginning. But the moderator maybe should have just let him get it out.
Yeah, but this was definitely the moderator wanted to push that point, right? But it could have just been one sentence. Like, that's an excellent question, and it makes me actually, like, race is an important factor in all of these conversations in terms of economic justice, and climate justice is no exception. Like, that would have been the way to, like, sort of take some control. Right. And I think what happened was a lot of the moderators were kind of like, I'm going to poke at you, I'm going to poke at you, I'm going to leave you alone, I'm going to poke at you. So, but I think there's also, some history that Bernie has not always responded great. It's like in interviews, there's enough interviews where Bernie has sort of stumbled on this issue. So I think if I was doing debate prep with Bernie, I would have been like, if you get asked a question about race,
just lean into
be ready for that question and be ready to respond to it directly.
Dee, by the way, can we play that? We have this Bernie clip. It's funny you should say that. Dennis played this for me before we went on the show. Where is it from? A Washington Post interview?
I think this was actually, though, the first time they really allowed him to answer a race question head on, though.
At that debate.
In the debate, yeah,
Okay.
because at the other two debates, they didn't.
All right, check out this. This is.
Oh, also, John Delaney's still in the race.
There you go. See, he's got at least $200 million.
I forgot his first name was John.
At least $2 million.
Here we go.
$200 million.
Come on. Maybe. Hold on.
Here we go.
We'll definitely edit this part out.
Where's that like dramatic music?
Come on, it's like
Dun, dun,
buffering.
dun.
Yeah, come on, it's buffering. The buffering noise. Hold on.
He's taking
Gotta
his
do a little
time. Should I stall while you're
Control
doing
R.
that?
Hold on. They'll probably play an ad now. Here we go.
Yeah.
Watch this. Ooh. Here we go. Boy, this is awkward, huh? All right, skip ads.
Okay. All right.
All right, and then I gotta fast forward here.
All right, we're almost done with this interview anyway. But I just would love to get you guys' reaction to this
We're
one.
live now, or we're just taping?
Oh, we're live now.
Live. Welcome to the Ben Joravsky Show.
It's like
it's all right.
buffering.
It's what maybe next time.
I've dropped the ball like 4 times.
Don't
in this
worry about it. It's
interview.
all good.
It's okay.
But it's
We're
I
gonna
mentioned-
have to take that raise we gave you last
man.
time back. I'm
But
sorry.
it's Bernie Sanders being hit head on with the race question, and his response is pretty funny. I will say this: I believe you.
That I'm white. Was it the question about?
Oh, the woman. He's like, yeah. When they were talking about women in office,
It was
and he said,
Obama.
and I'm white.
It was the Obama quote.
All right, we're going to close with that. No, this was an interview with the Washington Post.
Okay, something else.
And you can listen to it if you really want to get full Bernie. This is Bernie at all his Berniness. It's just blunt and out there and being Bernie. And he calls this reporter out pretty good. All right, we'll close with Barack Obama and what I perceive as a very anti-Bernie bias. And feel free to vigorously disagree with me. I see Barack Obama symbolic of centrist Democrats in general, cannot tolerate Bernie Sanders.
No.
And we've been talking about the biases against women and the biases against candidates of color. But the bias against Bernie Sanders is its own unique thing. And I believe it's because he embarrasses them. In other words, he's been preaching the same message since the 1960s and been ignored by the Democratic Party, who say you can't preach that message because you'll turn off voters and they won't want to vote for you. And lo and behold, most people now come to the conclusion, Sameena, that if Bernie been the nominee in 2016, he would have beat Donald John Trump. And they hate that, the centrists do, because they don't want you to believe. That's just my interpretation. But Barack Obama essentially said anybody but Bernie with that quote about old white men. Now, people say, well, it could apply to Joey Biden. Yeah, but you all know.
No, it's
I know
about
who he
it's
was
about
talking
Bernie.
All right, talk about the anti-Bernie bias.
Yeah, and it's funny because people saw that quote and they're like, and I saw a lot of white women in my social media feed like, oh, we love Barack so much. I'm like, you don't have any idea what the context is of that statement. It is not. If Barack Obama was such a great feminist, where was his vice president? Where was his? I mean, like, come on, let's just get real. Let's look back. But yeah, we
that
already
was calculated.
Yeah, we already got there was like in the last month. It's hard to keep track of the days where it was very clear that if Bernie started to look like he was surging, that Barack Obama would be the Bernie killer. Like that's going to be his role in this. And I don't know. There was a really great interview with Harry Reid in the last month. I don't know if you caught it. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. But and just talking about how all the candidates have come to talk to him. But it's very clear that that's what that statement was about. But and Bernie was, like you said, he was funny about it. He was disarming, and yes, Bernie is the sort of the town crier. He's the guy who keeps saying the same thing, and he's embarrassing them because they're hypocrites. They're the ones who say that they believe in diversity, and then they've got almost an entirely white, front runners. They're the ones who say they believe in the environment and have Biden, who doesn't. I mean, climate justice is like an oxymoron for him. Doesn't get it. They say that they're the party for black voters. Their front runner can't even answer a question about reparations. Bernie makes them look bad.
Yeah.
Of course they hate him.
Letesa, I'll give you the final word.
Ditto. No. Yeah. I've been very critical of my party, so I'm okay with that.
Do you think there's a Bernie bias?
There is absolutely a Bernie bias. People like to say that you can't do things that are unrealistic and that's moving too fast and you're doing too much and you're promising too much. But again, he's been saying these same things for 50 years. So at what point do we say, well, do some of it, part of it, any bit of it? That's not moving too fast. It's not shifting things in a way that is going to be so dramatic when it happens that the world falls apart. So yes, there is a bias because he's able to say, I've been consistent. And I don't think people want him to be able to say, I told you so either. No one wants him to be successful and it happens. And he's like, yeah, I told you I could be the one who beat Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm going to invest my first 100 days and all the political capital I have in my first year or so to get these things done that I promised you. There's a bias.
Right. And I want to there's something I heard, I actually got to hear this woman, Rachel Bitakofer, who's she's a pollster. She does a lot of analysis, and she called the House win for the Democrats in 2018. And she was presenting she was like predicting where things would land in 2020. And she was saying, like, you know what, you progressives were right. We do need, and I'm a centrist, and I'm saying this, I'm admitting that you all were right. A more progressive agenda is going to generate that response. And, you guys have been saying it for years and you were right. And she's like, she has the data. So like, if you don't want to hear from people who support Bernie or people who call themselves progressives, fine, don't. Talk to somebody who's kind of dispassionate and doing the analysis. Yep. And she's like, and she kept saying it. She's like, you guys are right. We are wrong. Centrists were wrong. And so, again, how many times do we need a centrist to lose to prove it?
Yeah. All right, we're going to close down the show. Before I do, I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to promote something or other that you want to promote, you want people to know about. We'll start with you, Sameena.
So, like I said, I started Hand Her the Mic. We're going to have more episodes in January. I actually just interviewed a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, Dr. Paru Shah, who actually studied women and women of color running for the U.S. House. So I have an interview with her, and also talked to one of the co-authors of a book on black women in Chicago called Lifting as They Climb. So that's coming up next month. And so always glad to be back, and Hand Her the Mic, at Hand Her the Mic on all social media.
Got it. Letesa?
Well, I'm still doing my mommy thing. That's the most awesome thing. Spent most of the day with my 2-year-old running around. So hence the cute little festive, holiday attire. It is a wonderful time of year. I am also going to relaunch a blog that I kind of took down a few years ago called Sharing My Light. So we'll see how that turns out. I'll let you guys know when it's live again.
All right, very good. Letesa, Wallace, Sameena, Mustafa, thank you very, very much. You're very generous with your time coming on the show after every debate. There's one in January, so just keep the next day clean, all right? Just keep the next day clear. I can't remember. I don't know when that debate is. Who knows how many people? I've got a feeling Bloomberg will have figured out a way to get on that stage.
He will.
I don't know if Steyer, they may be substituting billionaires. We'll see. Anyway.
I got the Bernie clip.
Let's just play the Bernie clip, just so you can.
Okay.
We've
I don't know why.
talked so much about it, and the man worked so hard to get the Bernie clip.
Yeah,
I think we'll give the raise back.
Oh my God, thank you. Good, I need it. It's Christmas time, All right, let me just double check. I had to get Firefox. I had to upload that. I don't know why. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, Chrome wouldn't play it.
Wow.
They're out to get Bernie, man.
I'm telling you.
Everybody's anti-Bernie. All right, here we go.
What's up with that? All right. Or maybe not. Oh, boy.
The much discussed Bernie. It's a great bit.
Color me embarrassed. What is going on here?
Okay.
The technology doesn't like you.
I'll tell you what. Next time you're on the show, we'll play the birdie bit. It's a great bit. All right, that's it for another Ben Joravsky bonus show. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Don't worry, and you have to go anyway. Yeah.